So hello everyone and welcome back to the Nesbitt Connection podcast. I'm doing a video again this time because to me I felt more comfortable the last time I recorded a podcast on video because let's face it, I'm used to kind of speaking in groups with people and working with people in person. So to me this kind of makes me feel like I'm actually working in person with people, and I just find it a lot easier. So welcome back, and again, you can catch this podcast on my YouTube channel, and I certainly would encourage you to look it up and obviously share with people you know. So just the theme of this podcast is it's been 10 years. There's a kind of an interesting story behind this because this past weekend I celebrated, it was 10 years since I actually left, we'll call it the job that I spent 25 years on. And if you have not heard the story, if you go to my very first podcast, I kind of share with you some of the details of that, and I don't want to bore you with a bunch of details in this podcast. But the moral of the story is after 25 years of working for this one company, I had changed, the company had changed, and I just wasn't a fit anymore, and I was essentially sent home in a taxi. And I just want to point out that was by far, the best thing that ever happened to me. I maybe didn't really recognize it at the time, but I want to kind of bring you up to speed on it because some of it I got to kind of think about this weekend, because some of the stuff that happened I thought was it was very special, we'll say. I for one thing, I certainly found out, if you've ever been, we'll say, left a job, you've been out a long time in a way that maybe wasn't positive, chances are you've experienced, different feelings, and you don't know just, what's supposed to go on. And at the end of the day, it's just literally a way of life. When you work someplace, you go into work every day. It's a way of life. It's not just a career. It's not just a job. It can be a way of life. And you get very used to it, and it becomes part of your identity, who you are. We'll say, you're part of that brand, and when people see you, you expect them to think of, you associate yourself with that company. But I just want to share something with you. After I get sent home, I got to be honest, I was totally humbled, and I was totally amazed at the amount of support that I got from not only friends, but I'm going to say from unexpected people that I never would have dreamt that I would have got support from. Like, my phone literally rang for 3 days straight. And again, I had people phone me that, it was very humbling that I had that many friends and from the industry. And of course, they're all concerned about me. And, there's some people kind of wanting the job, to hire me, so to speak, and kind of, just to kind of smooth me to see if I could maybe go there. And I understand all that, but at the same time, there was a lot of friends. So I want to share that with you because I thought that was pretty instrumental. There's a couple of things that I think that I learned that, going through that was, I would say, was really good. One of the things was actually a gentleman who I had looked up to for many, many years as like a mentor. I really admired the gentleman. I'm not sure that he even, well, I know he didn't. I don't think he even made it to high school. And he built one of the, I think, all-time greatest companies in our area. And this guy just had a wicked sense of humor, and he had wisdom. And I'm going to tell you, that's a hard thing to come across today, somebody that has wisdom. This guy had wisdom. And I'll never forget what he told me. He says, something? He said, as long as you are in the frame, you're never going to see the picture. And he said, you're by far better off out of that frame, as he called it. And he said, your life's going to change. And, he actually offered me up a condo in Florida to go down there and spend some time just to kind of relax. And like I say, just you cannot believe how nice some of the people were. Another thing that I'll never forget, I had a real good friend actually sent me the link to Steve Jobs' commencement address at Stanford University. And I watched that video, and I'm going to be honest with you, it almost brought tears to my eyes because it really hit home with me as where I was at. And I just, like I said, there was a few little details like that, I'd never forgotten. And of course, these friends, I'm still friends with them today. And I think it's really good. But like I say, so this weekend was the 10-year anniversary. And I'm not, I don't want to go on too much more about it, but I want to share with you some of the stuff that's obviously changed in 10 years, and most importantly, the stuff that I've learned. Because, we all can learn if we want to. And I work with a lot of groups, and one of the things I say regularly is that each and every one of us have what I call teachable moments every day. Every day we have teachable moments. However, not all of us, slow down long enough to recognize, what the lesson was. And I can't emphasize enough, the 12 teachable moments, and I've had 10 years of them, and I can't emphasize enough just, how much that I've grown. Just to give you a little example, so when my wife and I were married 25 years, I'm going to say it was, oh goodness, now, it was probably 2 or 3 years after I'd left and I started in business, we'd actually planned a trip to Europe for our 25th wedding anniversary. And it was a fabulous trip. We spent 3 weeks in Europe. Went to Italy and Austria and Germany. That was my second time to Italy, and I love Italy. I'm a food guy, so of course, Italy's my place. But I just want to share with you something that I thought was, if you ever want to get like a, one of those things that we'll call it stop shoe in your tracks. This trip to Italy really did it. My wife and I were walking down a sidewalk in Rome, and she essentially turned to me and she just asked me the question. She said, who are you? And I thought, this can be kind of a loaded question, right? Especially from your wife. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, she says, you're not the same guy I married. She said, the guy that I married, wore cowboy boots and jeans and got dirty and played with equipment. And she said, now you're this guy that, wears sport jackets and you're, a professional trainer. She said, who are you? You are not the guy that I married. Now, I'm going to tell you, to me, maybe I'm not that smart, but I took that as a compliment. And the thing is that, what I've gone through, anybody can go through. We can all become better. Yeah, I love saying, one of my favorite sayings is, we can all be just a little bit better tomorrow than we are today. That's not a hard thing to strive for, but, we can all be a little bit better tomorrow, than we are today. It's interesting. One night, I get a lot of, I'm very grateful for the amount of followers I have on Instagram, but I spend a fair bit of time on Instagram essentially because I get probably 30 or 35% of my business from Instagram, so it's well worth my while to be on Instagram. But one night I was on Instagram and I seen this lady, and I think she was a nurse, and I'm not even sure what happened, but I listened to what she had to say. And she said something, boy, did it ever hit home. And I'd heard this many, many times before, but I never heard the part that she put on the end before. And what she essentially said was that hurting people hurt people. I'd heard that many, many times. But what she said right after that really hit home. But she says healed people can help heal people. And you see, I will be the first to admit, for a lot of years, I was not a perfect leader. I did a lot of things that somewhat, I can't go back in the past. Yesterday ended last night. However, I'm somewhat ashamed of some of the stuff I did. I think, most leaders are. But I learned along the way. So, and what's important here is that, since I've made a lot of these mistakes, I'm always willing to share the mistakes that I made with somebody else so they can learn. Because let's face it, that's one of the easiest ways to learn. It's from our mistakes. Like I've said it before, we can learn a lot more from a good scare than we will a lesson. And lots of times, mistakes can scare the hell out of you. And I can't emphasize that enough. I just want to kind of fall back on something. I heard this lady, and this was a remarkable lady. I remember when I was at a meeting one day, and this lady, I think what really impressed me so much with her is that she was totally deaf. She was stone deaf. She could not hear a word what the actual speaker was saying, at this meeting I was at. And another nice lady was actually taking the time. I could not do this, but this other lady did, and she was actually taking what the speaker was saying and writing out notes and handing them to her so this lady could read the notes. Very remarkable lady. I got to meet her, and I wish I could remember her name, but I can't. But I remember one time I was lucky enough to actually hear her kind of share her story, and she had a really good story. And I remember one time she ended this story, and she said something I've never forgotten, and I've shared it with a lot of people. And she said at the end of her story, this lady, the very wise lady, she says, never put a question mark where God has put a period. And I love those sayings, and I love those quotes like that. I could live for days off of that. And if you only knew how this lady, and she was not a superstar, she was not a Rhodes Scholar, she was just, I think, a housewife, a nice lady, lots of wisdom, salt of the earth. And if you only knew how many times in life, especially in the last 10 years that I've remembered, never put a question mark, where God has put a period. And I've never forgotten that. I've lived by it, and it's been so rewarding, just to kind of to accept that and to realize that that's, things are meant to be. I would say it was probably 8 years ago. I read a book from Wayne Dyer, and the name of the book was called I Can See Clearly Now. And Wayne Dyer kind of goes through this book, and I think it was like 50-some little 3 or 4 page chapters. It was an easy read. You could literally sit down and read a chapter in a minute or in a couple of minutes. It was an easy read. But what he essentially did was he simply took everything that happened in his life, starting from really when he was a baby, till the time he wrote the book. And he said that everything that happened that he saw along the way had happened for a reason, that he had learned from it. And it gets back to these teachable moments that I was referring to a minute ago. And I can say the same thing has happened in my life. I'm so lucky to have, I'll give you an example. I'm certainly not saying this to boast, but I'm lucky enough that I've been to a lot of manufacturing plants literally around the world, that I've seen how manufacturing plants work. You cannot believe what I learned at the Volvo plant when I went to Sweden. And because of that, because I've learned so much, and believe me, I'm like a sponge when I get into those places, because I've learned and seen what they did, I've been able to share that with other people. So that, like I said, there was a reason for what I went through. I went to the world's best university you could have ever went to, in that 25 years in that career. So like I said, I can see clearly now why, all those things had kind of happened. The next thing I want to kind of point out is that for a number of years I kind of belonged to this organization where I was often asked to, stand up and give a talk, and it was a simple talk about, some of my experience, strength, and hope, and what, some of what I've gone through, and share with others, how my story can help them. So I had a lot of what you'd call speaking experience. So because I had a lot of experience of speaking, I wasn't really afraid to speak. And not only that, is I'd like to think I'm better now than I was, because speaking is like anything. It's like a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And I can, get up and talk now, and I really sometimes don't even need a script to go by. I can just get up and give a talk, and people clap, and they seem, very involved, and they seem excited. So obviously, I must be doing something good. So I think that's important. So like I say, there's a whole reason I went through all this stuff, and the constant learning that I've always did. Right now, I think on my iPhone, I think it's 223 audiobooks, and I kind of like to share with you just how incredibly deaf I am, and I have these hearing aids, and I can listen. I would say I probably average 4 or 5 hours a day of listening to either audiobooks or podcasts. I'm continually learning, and you would be surprised, what you can learn in a couple hours. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Some of the best learning that I have done when I went for a run. There's nothing better than going for an hour and a half run, listen to an audiobook, and you're out there and you're running through the bush or whatever, and you cannot believe what I can learn. And I come back and I kind of put it down. Hey, I want to share that with the group. And some of the stuff is so simple, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's the simple stuff that we're missing today. It's the simple stuff we're missing today. I was with a group on Friday, and I flat out asked the question. I said, how many people here are on social media? And I was actually surprised how few were actually on social media. Like there was, 15 in the group maybe, and there might have been 4 or 5 that were actually on social media. Actually, it's probably about 8 maybe were on it, but there was only 3 or 4 admitted to putting posts on. So I kind of asked the question. I said, look, when you post something on social media, do you go back and check for likes? And I said, well, of course. So I kind of pointed out, well, you see that right there is one of the secrets of success today. We're trying to work with a generation, this next generation, who live for the likes. They essentially live for the likes. And when we're in a leadership role, if we don't tell them that we like them and that we're happy with what they do and we appreciate what we do, well, guess what? We're going to lose them. And I'm just, it's simple. Like some of this stuff, it's really, really easy. But boy, oh boy, it can be real hard to do. Like as Jim Rohn put it, anything that's real easy to do is also real easy not to do. And, we have to take the time, because let's face it, we're facing this likes generation. It's funny thing is that, when I first started in business, I had, because of my John Maxwell training, I became this John Maxwell certified trainer, speaker, coach, whatever I guess you want to call it. I guess it's the proper name. But they also provide a lot of what I would call, good business advice, because there's a lot of people like myself who are just starting a business and they want to provide support when you first start out. By no means am I going to say anything negative. I think it's an excellent group. It's an excellent learning opportunity, and it's all good. However, one of the things that they suggested was that, you got to join the Chamber of Commerce and you got to join all these kind of local things. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was good at the time. I thought this was really cool. I've kind of joined the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm out meeting new people. But the funny thing is I belonged to the Chamber of Commerce for, say, a lot of years locally. Never made a penny. Never made a penny. And I would hold leadership events, never sell a ticket. So the reason I'm pointing this out is that sometimes, people with the best intentions are going to give us advice. And, I don't know that it's good advice. But the difference being is I pride myself in working with people who I refer to as taking a shower after work. I'm a blue collar, born and raised blue collar. I love working with blue collar people. And when you think of it, there's no blue collar people at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. It wasn't my crowd. Now, it was good because I actually got to create my elevator pitch, and I got to meet a lot of people, and it wasn't bad by any means. But the thing that I think that's most curious here is that a friend of mine, actually a company I work with, the general manager of this company, he was very actively involved in that. He was actually, if you can see in the background, the picture from the OCA, he was actually I think his proper term was he was the chair of the OCA for the year, and he general manager, and he helped me out, and I did a lot of work with his company, and I look up to him as a mentor. I'll always be grateful for Mark, for some of the, for the wisdom he gave me. But he kind of suggested, that I should join the Ottawa Construction Association. And you got to remember, when you're first starting in business and whatnot, you got to kind of watch what you're doing as far as money goes. And I remember to join the Ottawa Construction Association was, I want to say, probably close to 5 times what the annual fee was for the Chamber of Commerce. So there was that too. I'm thinking, geez, do I really want to spend that money because I've joined these other things and never made a penny? And besides that, and this is the part that I think that's interesting, because lots of times we have fears, and our fears are in our own mind. I was somewhat nervous to join the Ottawa Construction Association because of my affiliation with this company, and I really thought that maybe it was all in my head, but I thought, hey, look, this company is not going to do me any favors, and the chances are they may say negative things about me. I thought, well, gee, I don't know that I want to spend a bunch of money to in turn have a company say bad things about me, so I was always kind of somewhat reluctant to join. But, I even mentioned this to a guy that I consider a really good friend, that I said to him, I says, I'd like to join, but I'm a little bit nervous that, this other company might, not do me any favors. And it was funny what he said to me. He says, Mark, you got to remember, he says, everybody likes you. And he says, a lot of people say good things about you. And he said, I'm not going to say that they say that about that company. So chances are they're not going to believe the company. And I thought, boy, that's pretty good. And if you ever listen to Andy Stanley often refers to the fact that, if you've got this 500-pound gorilla and you got to get out of the cage and wrestle with it, and you got to get stuff resolved. And that, for me, joining the Ottawa Construction Association was like that 500-pound gorilla. I was somewhat nervous. I didn't want to go down that road, for fear of what could happen. I joined the Ottawa Construction Association. Best move I ever made. You cannot believe how good that has been for my career. I was successful enough, lucky enough, and I did some training there. They let me actually do some of my courses there, and then they get into the little bit more serious in the training business. And now I actually facilitate some training courses for the Ottawa Construction Association, and coincidentally, at the annual general meeting a couple of years ago, they actually put up a picture of me as one of the trainers and kind of broadcasted that I was one of the trainers. And it felt really good in the sense that here's the organization that I was somewhat nervous to join. And, only a couple of years later, they're showing me off as one of their trainers, and they're speaking very highly of me. So I just want to point this out. Lots of times we have these fears built up in our heads, and they're all in our heads. And that happens to me too, because I have sold myself short so many times. And I think some of the reason is that lots of times, I've heard this said before, and I love the saying where the gentleman says, never compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. And I've been guilty of that. I try not to do it, but I think I've been guilty of that. And quite often I'll look and see some of the people will say that do the same thing I do. And they're like university scholars or college people, and I'm not like that. And I thought, gee, I don't know that I'm as good as them. But the funny thing is, I have a very unique niche working with some of these companies, and you cannot believe some of the successes that I've been able to bring to some companies, and not only some companies, some people. Not long ago, I was actually working with this one gentleman, and he said to me after the session, he says, Mark, he says, you not only helped me with being a better leader, he says, you helped me with my life. He said, this is like therapy to me. And then he gave me a big hug. And, you can't buy that. Like, you simply cannot buy that. So like I say, I love what I do. You cannot believe what it's been like in 10 years, and the 10 years time, one of the things, both of our daughters now I was lucky enough that I could, because I was no longer working these 70, 80-hour weeks and being on the road all the time, I got to take them for coffee after school. Then they went to university. I got to take them to university. And I remember one year for Christmas, my daughter sent me a little card where she said, thanks for making sure I never had to take the bus home. So you cannot believe how good life has been since I started on my own. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just pointing this out that, it's amazing what 10 years will do. Tony Robbins says that, we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in 5 years. And that's true. That is absolutely true. Andy Stanley's wife says, that, the days last forever, but the years fly by. And it's true. It's been 10 years. It's been a remarkable 10 years. I'm so grateful today that a lot of the business I get today now is referrals. I can't think of, really the last time I had to go looking for business. It's almost all referrals and it's repeat business. And I love it. I love work with groups. I'm so lucky I get into some companies sometimes. And there's one company I was actually supposed to be with today that I've been working with them now for, I want to say, 2 or 3 years with all the different levels of the leaders in the company. And you cannot believe how they've changed and how I've been able to help them and how they become more successful. I often say any kind of training is a lot like going to the gym. You cannot go to the gym for 2 solid days and expect to stay in shape forever. A couple hours once a week or whatever, something more consistent is by far more beneficial than 2 days or 1 day of solid training. I've seen it, I've proven it, and of course I've seen people live it. So I'm so grateful for that. Some of the things we'll say that's changed in 10 years, like when I left the industry 10 years ago, let's just say people were getting somewhat hard to find. Today, you cannot believe how many companies that I work with, and they're just stressed out because I haven't got enough people. You cannot believe how many times I hear in a week, we could do more work, but we don't have enough people. We're just going to put this on hold. We haven't got enough people to do that job this week, so we're just going to put that on hold. We've reached a time in Canada, at least in particular, where buying equipment is not a problem. Anybody can go buy equipment. It's just to get the people that operate it and the people like the estimators and the people to do the job, people that actually finish concrete and do work like that and get their hands dirty. Boy, I'm going to tell you, it's impossible to find. I drove by a place the other day. Actually, they make interlocking paving stone, and they had a sign up where they were paying a $1,500 signing bonus to start working there. Like, that's unheard of. That's simply unheard of. I want to be careful. That's a whole other podcast of what the cause is, and I don't want to get too political here, but boy, I was eating breakfast in a hotel last week. I was traveling last week, and I was eating breakfast in a hotel, and I was watching the news, and I'm not sure if it was they had two TVs on, so I forget which one I saw it on, but the lady on the TV, I guess it was Earth Day, and that's why they were doing this. But this lady on the TV said 45% of Canadians suffer from eco-anxiety. So the environment has got the whatever in the environment has got them so frustrated because the world's going to end that 45% of the people right now are suffering anxiety from this environment, okay? And what's funny is I actually was with a group that morning, and I think there was like 15 in the group, and I said, anybody here suffer with eco-anxiety? Of course, they had no idea what I was talking about. But what's interesting, and I actually posted this on Instagram on the weekend, is 100% of companies that I know are suffering from anxiety because they haven't got people. And they can't get people, and sometimes the people that show up, let's just say, that they don't seem to be engaged, maybe common sense is lacking. And of course, there's a lot we can do to fix that. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but there's a lot we can do to fix that. But the thing is now more than ever, we need to be investing in our leadership team. Because let's face it, if you're short of people and you have somebody leave because maybe the leader said something wrong with them, didn't acknowledge them, now more than ever is the time to make sure we don't lose people. We're so focused on getting people that we're not paying enough attention, I think, to keeping the people we have. A couple of weeks ago, I heard a story where a couple of people left, and apparently one of the people that left, and let's just say we'll call him the most influential one, he wanted to talk with the manager. He was upset, and let's just say he really wanted to talk to the manager and get the air sorted out, okay? The funny thing is if the manager walked by him, wouldn't look at him, wouldn't smile, wouldn't do anything, the guy quit. All because the manager wouldn't acknowledge him or smile or do anything when he was upset. There you go. And this company needs people like every other company does. So like I said, there's never been a time, I don't think in the history when we have, we have to work so hard to keep the people we have because there's no people there. It's so much so, I actually developed a course because another company here locally asked me to do it. I developed this course called Soft Skills for the Hard Hat. It's funny because I called it Soft Skills for the Hard Ass, and we don't really like the title, but it's true. We've got what you'd call hard ass leaders, hard ass managers. I was one, so I know. They're called hard asses. Okay, that's the real world. They're called hard asses. But, these hard asses, they need soft skills because if you only knew how many good people they're chasing away. We've got people showing up that it takes nothing to upset them. My God, it's the stories that I hear, even if half of them are true, we're in trouble. And like I say, so, this is where, it's, you got to remember, with people, small things are the big things. With people, small things are the big things. It's just saying hello. It's acknowledging them. It's the like thing. I hope my wife isn't listening to this podcast because she's always at me for not spending enough time with her. But the thing is the most important thing we can ever give anybody is our time. And boy, that can be really hard to do. Especially you ask anybody today, you go to any job site today, everybody's short of people. The two people called in sick or whatever, and of course, because of that, the leader has to work twice as hard, and because the person's not there, the leader has to make up for them. So then, of course, when the leader is doing their job, and then they're trying to do the job with the person not there, they just don't have time to walk around the plant or the quarry or the construction site, whatever you want to call it, wherever your situation is, to make sure their people are happy. And it's a snowball effect. It's a compound effect, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I really believe we've got to stop and take the time to fix this problem. Because if we don't, we're going to have nobody. And it's kind of just that simple. I really believe, that these podcasts are good. And it's funny, I was listening to a Jordan Peterson book when I went for a run the other day. And Jordan Peterson says, lots of times we need to talk just so we can think. Because as we're talking, we seem to think. So these podcasts are also good for me because I get to do some thinking, as I'm sharing with you, some of the stuff that I have learned. I guess I should probably, kind of call this a quit. But it's important to see what 10 years has done. And if you look back where you were 10 years ago, I'm sure you're much further ahead. But I'm so thrilled that, where I am today from where I was 10 years ago. I'm a better person. I'm a better husband for sure. I'm a better father for sure. There's a whole lot of things that I did. And the thing is, I just got a little bit better every day. And like, again, my goal has always been just be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. And you can do that too. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the Nedbut podcast. And by all means, please rate us, because that's how we get more listeners. Thank you.